What's up, guys? You are on the air and off the books with Bethann and Samantha, and today we are going to be talking about
Midnight is the Darkest Hour by Ashley Winstead.
Yes, we actually got this book as an ARC from Sourcebooks, so thank you, Sourcebooks. You guys are the real MVP.
Yes.
If you've never read an Ashley Winstead book, or if you kind of recognize the name, she also wrote The Last Housewife, which is a really, really popular book as well. And I think Midnight is the Darkest Hour is pretty popular because I was seeing this book everywhere, and that is the whole reason I requested an ARC.
Yes, and this book actually just released on what's 10 October. Wow. Month 10 of 3 on October 3rd. So this book is fully accessible now. We tried to wait. Wink, wink. We tried to wait until it was released so that you guys could have your hands on it. And this is going to get spoilery, so we'll let you know when that happens. And I think this was really interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of, it reminded me, so basically, Midnight is the Darkest Hour is about a girl. It starts out with a girl named Ruth and her best friend Everett. And basically the people of this church is kind of, or this town is kind of like a church town. So it reminds me.
Like a small, like Southern Baptist,
yes,
very staunch religious town. Small town, everybody knows everybody's business and everybody believes in Jesus, but they don't act like they believe in Jesus.
Right.
They're kind of like the gossipiest, most like awful.
It's very
kind of
like
people.
Back in the day, like the men go to work, the women stay home. They obey their husbands. They don't talk
and like
back.
Not just obey their husbands, but like accept abuse and
Bow
things like
down.
that. Yeah, like servanthood-esque kind of vibes. So
yeah.
You want to read the synopsis and like let you really...
Yes, because you know how Samantha's book descriptions go. They're kind of like somebody plugged a fork into a light socket and electrocution. That's kind of a great description.
I also want to read this quote from Claire McIntosh, who's also a New York Times bestselling author. She says, "Where the Crawdads Sing meets Twilight meets Thelma and Louise in this brilliantly realized, totally original thriller."
Yeah.
And that's pretty great. That's a pretty great
It reminded me a lot of Small Favors too, which we have talked about and reviewed. Just kind of like that small town.
As far as the romance goes?
Yeah. The romance and like the small town, like kind of culty vibes.
Correct. So, a killer haunts a small southern Louisiana town, and two outcasts, the preacher's daughter and the boy from the wrong side of the tracks, hold the key to uncovering the truth. For fans of Verity and A Flicker in the Dark, Midnight is the Darkest Hour is a twisted tale of murder, obsession, love, and the beastly urges that lie dormant within us all, even the God-fearing folk of Bottom Springs, Louisiana. In her small hometown, librarian Ruth Cornier I think it's Cornier, or it's probably Cornier, because it's Louisiana.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know.
Always felt like an outsider, even as her beloved father rains fire and brimstone warnings from the pulpit at Holy Fire Baptist. Unfortunately for Ruth, the only things the townspeople fear more than God and the devil are the myths that haunt the area, like the story of the Low Man, a vampiric figure said to steal into sinners' bedrooms and kill them on moonless nights. When a skull is found deep in the swamp next to mysterious carved symbols, Bottom Springs is thrown into an uproar, and Ruth realizes only she and Everett, an old friend with a dark past, have the power to comb this town's secret underbelly in search of true evil. A dark and powerful novel like the fans have come to anticipate from Ashley Winstead, Midnight is the Darkest Hour is an examination of the ways we've come to expect love, religion, and stories to save us, the lengths we have to go in order to take back power, and the monstrous work of being a girl in this world. So, I don't know how you feel about that synopsis, but I think it's really misleading.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to be mean about it, but it
I wish it went into... So the Low Man, is basically like this feared creature of the town.
It's like a cryptid kind of situation?
Yes. And I wish that it took that turn going more into the Low Man. but it just kind of doesn't, like, explore that.
No, it makes it
well.
seem like it's a central part of the story, and it's not.
Yeah.
It actually doesn't really get mentioned, but in the very beginning of the book, about chapter 4. And then after that, it kind of just doesn't exist anymore. And then they kind of talk about, I wish they would have replaced the low man here with more like occult activity, because everybody is so obsessed with, like, there's witches, there's Satanists, there's people doing paganism and worship and blah 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 in the swamps and stuff like that. That's more what it is than the low man.
Like, it's their library is policed. Like, they only have religious books in their library. No, like, reading for fun. None of that.
Exactly. And if you read anything that's not the Bible, like, you're the devil and you practice, witchcraft.
It's very
and
extreme
Satanism.
On that aspect.
It is
the story.
It's. And it also, the thing is that the back of this book, it's also really a book about. It's very gray area, because the bad guys and the good guys blur really hard in this book. Mm-hmm. And your main characters are, like it really says, it's more Bonnie and Clyde than it is Thelma and Louise. Yeah. Because there's a love story here, and that's very apparent. And also, there's murder from the very beginning, and you already know who's done all of the murdering.
Yeah.
There's nothing hidden from you.
Yeah, there's no, like, crazy twist or, like, oh, I didn't see that coming.
But she still does a really good job of, like, what she does reveal at the end of the book. It's still pretty, like, not breathtaking, but, like, oh, okay. Like, that kind of pieces that puzzle together. So it's like you're going into a puzzle half finished, and she's just kind of adding the pieces for you. And there's nothing really, like popping up and, like, smacking you in the face, like, oh, my God, I never saw that coming. It's more of, like, these things are finally fitting together. And this makes sense why that this girl is the way that she is. So it's more of like a character study of the main character, Ruth, about how her life growing up in this staunch religious home affected her mind and her, like, personality, how she behaves, like, what's expected of her, and how, like, her friendship with Everett works because he's the bad boy. Yeah. And how she should be marrying this quote-unquote good boy, when in reality, they're all the bad guys. Yeah. Nobody in this book is morally correct. Everyone is morally gray. And, like, you're rooting for Everett and Ruth this whole time.
Even though they're
guys. Very, like, there's some psychotic issues going on here. There are some problems. Like, these two are not correct in the head at all. And
spoilers, like, moving on here, because I don't think there's, like, a good way not to spoil it.
I agree. So before we spoil, the gist of the matter is you go into reading about Ruth, a girl who really loves Twilight. Twilight is a central part of this book.
She bases her expectations of, like, romance
all
off
on
of Twilight.
Yes. So essentially what you need to go in is, like, I am reading a character study about this girl, Ruth, and how her upbringing has affected her, and how that upbringing, even though it's totally opposite of this bad boy, is still essentially has the same effect on her in her adult life, and how the things that she was reading and the things that she was exposed to, like, come out in the wash at the end. Like, this is what this is. Yes. You know what? No, it's not thrillery. It's more domestic suspense.
Yeah,
that's better.
People say it reminds them a lot of Where the Crawdads Sing, and I can definitely, like, see that. I haven't read Where the Crawdads Sing, but just the description and, like, the plot of the book seems very similar to this.
Nothing is going to jump out and, like, bite you, but I think it's still a good story. This is what I'll say, is that I liked it, but it was not for me.
Yeah, I think if you like kind of like domestic thrillers, kind of something like that,
this is for you.
It is for you.
Yes. And also, if you're a fan of Twilight, I think you'll really connect with this in some kind of way, especially if you grew up with Twilight when it first came out. This poses a lot of questions that I think we'll
Tanya,
kind of talk
you need
about
to
later.
Read this.
Yeah, Tanya, I think you would actually be really interested in reading this for sure. I don't know if you'll like all of it because they are a little wackadoodle in here.
Yeah.
But just for the Twilight portions, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Shout out to Tanya, our AV librarian. So, getting into warnings, stop here. And go ahead and pick this book up. So, this book was, how many pages? Almost 400 pages long, which is quite the chunker. So, spoilers. So, This poor girl has a very twisted, I tabbed things. Oh, and I also wanted to say that there are content warnings at the very beginning that are outlined. So if you look at this, you open it right up to the first page, and that's the first thing you see, so that you don't have to, like, read this if you're triggered about some things, because some of the things are pretty they do some things that are pretty tasteless.
I think the whole time that there's obviously something sketchy happening with this Holy Fire Church. Like, there's some, like, smuggling of, like, money. There's money laundering going on.
Yeah, these men who say that they're perfect obviously are not perfect. Yeah. And there are some they're trying to cover up and rule with an iron fist in a way that diverts the attention from them.
Yeah.
Because
like the whole time you're reading the book, like, okay, something's, like, going on behind the scenes of this church, and it has something to do.
Yes. And Ruth's father is, like, the main preacher and the main guy of the church.
Yeah.
And so he raises her with this, like, he's merciless with her. Completely merciless. And he embarrasses her, and he's abusive.
Yeah.
He's absolutely abusive. And then he wants to put all of that under God, and that if you don't do as I say, then, how can I love you? Because you don't give me anything to love, because you don't reflect God. But all the while, this man is, spoiler, dealing drugs and running this huge crime syndicate under this town.
Yes.
And, like, she's, like, coming up in her age, like, if it kind of flashes back and forth between now and then when she was a teenager, and how she reveals that, her and Everett are killers.
Yeah.
Like,
and I think the whole time they want you to feel bad for Ruth, but like, okay, Ruth, you're not so great yourself. And I think the one part of the book that, like, really, like, triggered for me, like, this girl has, like, problems, is when she confronts Everett, because Everett's kind of just MIA all the time, and he just randomly will go away.
He does.
And she's like, she starts quoting Twilight to him, like the part where Bella confronts Edward, and she's like, you're like, you sparkle in the sunlight, and you're extra strong. Whatever she says, she starts literally quoting. She starts quoting the book, and Everett is like, what?
Yeah, like, what are you talking about? Like,
it was so, like...
And she says, like, you're a vampire. That explains it. Like, you're my Edward. Like, this is us.
Because she is, like, she's so sheltered that this is, like, her delusion.
Yes, she is very delusional.
Yeah.
And, like, and it goes in here saying, and this is a very, like, spun through storyline through here, like, one of the things where she's cornered by one of her dad's, like, preacher friends at night while she's really little in her nightgown. And she was saying, like, hiding the fact that Twilight's her favorite book and saying that Little Women is her favorite book. And then he, like, says, his bushy eyebrows raised. A reader then. He eyed me. Dangerous quality in a girl. And then it's just kind of like, you nasty creep. Like, and then all the while before this, he's talking about how, like, men are beasts and they're driven sexually to hunger after women, and you have to protect yourself. Like, it is very, like, men are this wild, like, uncontrollable thing, and it's not their fault that they have these urges, so it's on women to make men accountable for themselves.
Yeah.
Is it misogynistic? Is that the word? And, like, very, like, male dominated, and how he's like, you have to go to bed and hide yourself because, I'm like this beast in this zoo. If you let the cage out, like, I'm going to come for you.
What can you expect? This is just who we are.
Yeah, and you just have to, like, it's your responsibility to keep us in check. Like, how dare you? And, like, and then it goes on to talking about Twilight to Everett. Mm-hmm. And saying... He's asking her, why have you always been so obsessed with it? And, like, she goes in talking about how, like, Bella gives up her life for Edward to protect herself and him and the family.
Yeah.
And it is so ironic because we just got done talking about how, like, these men are putting on her for the woman to protect.
Right.
And how Bella kind of does the same thing with Edward. And then Everett's like, are you sure that that's love? And he was like, giving up your life for somebody. Are you sure, like, that's what you need to be doing? Like, giving away your humanity for somebody else. But still, ironic on ironic on ironic, she's doing it for Everett. Because he's like this crazy psychopathic killer because his dad was a drunk and he beat him all the time and his mom died at the hands of his dad. And
he's like a little Dexter.
Yeah.
Because he does, Everett is not, spoiler, huge spoiler. So the very end, they are like, we've gotten away with this. We're skipping town, you know.
Yeah, we're done now. Even though they should have left a long time ago.
So they're like driving, and Ruth is like, there's police lights following us. And Everett's like, no, it's fine. They're not coming for us. Like, what are the odds? Like, what do you mean, what are the odds?
Yeah, like, dude, you're talking about hiding bodies in the river and the
y'all
swamp.
just, like, burned down the church.
Yes, and then also, like, who do you think this is? Because you've been making public displays of affection with each other.
Right.
Going back and forth of this angsty relationship that you have. I love you, but I don't love you, and I love this other guy that I have to obligatorily marry because I have to be a good girl. And he's just like, but your dad... I think the whole part that got me was when Barry, the guy that she's supposed to marry, the good guy, was yelling in Everett's face saying, she's the trophy that her father gave me and I'm to take care of her. And she's just like, hold up. Wait a minute. I am no trophy. Nobody gave me away. And Barry's like, of course your dad did. I'm like,
what do you mean?
Bro.
No, I think, like, when they're running, like, at the end when they're running away, it just shows, like, how delusional they are and how they don't even realize, like, what they're doing. And so, like, at one point in the book, Barry is, like, going to confess to her, like, not confess, but tell her, like, I have found out all this stuff about Everett. Like, he's like a killer. He doesn't just kill people here. He's killed people everywhere.
And that's why he skips out every other
And
summer.
she's just like, you better run, because I'm going to kill you. And Barry
she's
just
like,
runs
you should be
away.
scared of me, not Everett. And she, like, stands up to this man, and he runs off from her, which makes no sense.
Yeah, and so, like, Everett and Ruth are in the car, like, running, and they see the cops, and they're like, Ruth's like, just drive faster. And Ruth remembers that conversation with Barry, and she's just like, oh, this is so funny. He, like, said this. Isn't that so funny? And
Silence.
And she's
like,
just like, sweating. And she's just like, you know what? It's fine.
It's okay. It's great.
Let's go out together. They just crash. They just drive their car into the river.
Extra spoiler. The literal end is them driving off a cliff, looking into each other's eyes, saying, you know, this is the life that I wanted. You are what I wanted.
Yeah.
When they could have just ran off together at 18.
Or just been in jail together.
Yeah, like, it was really good. Yeah. I liked it for what it was. You know, I was listening to a TikTok on Instagram because I'm that guy.
Watches TikToks on Instagram.
Was talking about people reviewing books with subjectively and then objectively, and how we should be reviewing the books based off of the author's intention for the book, and then talking about our personal opinion about the books, because everybody's personal opinion about something is going to be different.
Yeah.
And objectively, I really do think that the author, 5 out of 5, did that.
Yeah.
She puts down here, when it talks about what we expect out of love, religion, stories, small towns, life, I think that she did get her story across. I think that this was very impactful, and it poses a lot of good questions. This is a good book discussion book.
Yes.
Also, if you get the copy, there are book discussion questions in the back, but that doesn't make it a good book discussion book. What I'm saying is that you could really unpack a lot of things here.
Yeah.
Societally.
Yeah.
Like, from your personal past, like, how you view books and reading for yourself. Banning books for libraries, which is a big thing right now, sweeping over our country. There are a lot of things that are happening that this book could be a good talker. Now, for me personally, this just isn't a book. It's very romance heavy. It's very angsty romance, very dark romance. Mm-hmm. And it's slow burn, it's slow burn, high stakes, but at the same time it's very, like, what do they call it? Fade to black?
Yeah. I think the one thing that irritated me about the romance in this is that she just, like, kind of accepts that she has to be with Barry, and I'm just like, for what? Like, you've already gone against your father.
There's so much proof here to yourself.
Yeah, you already have, like, completely rebelled against, like, the church, and so why now are you choosing, okay, yeah, he can just own me and whatever. It's like, you might as well just go with Everett, because everybody thinks you're sketchy anyway.
And the only reason why she really does that is because he decides not to come home last summer.
Yeah.
And so he's essentially gone for more than he normally is. And so she's like, I'm lonely and I need love so badly, I'm willing to sacrifice my independence and individuality.
She was definitely, like, obsessed, and she was definitely basing her like, I honestly don't think that she loved Everett. I think she was basing their love off of Twilight.
Yeah.
And that was her Edward, and that's in her head, that was romance. It doesn't matter, like, what would have happened, like, she would have loved him because he was Edward.
Right. And then in his turmoil,
even though he was a bad person. Well, I mean, I don't know. Like,
I mean, they're all victims of their circumstances.
Yes.
And, like, I feel bad for all of them, but at the same time, like, it's so twisted.
Yeah.
It's so twisted in every way imaginable. And that's what makes it so good, is that there's really no good people here. Yeah. No one is good. Everyone is morally great. Everyone has unpacked, like, things that they need to really sit down with a therapist to talk about. Like,
Beth Ann's new book for 2024, she's going to write it. It's called There's No Good People Here.
There's no good people here. Like, it's, like, mind
There's
blown.
probably a book called that. I feel like there is.
Probably. Like, and if there's not, then you're welcome.
Just gave you a title.
Just
trademark
that over. It reminds me of, like, I don't know that I liked, like, reading through and getting through this story. I loved what it brought me. It's like The Measure. Like, we just had Nikki Ehrlich here, and I didn't necessarily care for not the content. I didn't really like the stories and stuff like that in it. That wasn't the weight for me. Mm-hmm. What made it a 5-star for me was what it brought to the table, and this brings a lot to the table just
deep
like that.
Meanings.
Yes, and it was just good in that way. In some ways it's a 5 out of 5. In other ways it's a 3.6 out of 5.
Yeah.
Because I also didn't like her going back and forth. Like, if you love him, you love him, and, like, just do the thing. Like,
yeah. This book for me was like, I liked it. I give it like a 4.2 out of 5, and it's not like a book that I'm like, oh my gosh, like, but this is my everything, you know, like.
I think for some of you, though, that it will be.
Yeah.
Vampire Academy.
I'm on my 3rd reread, guys.
Also, speaking of Vampire Academy, she just wrote a blog about that on our website.
I did.
www.khcpl.org/podcast. If you want to read that, we do have a blog popped up there on the library website. Yes. Check that out if you want to read some things that we read behind the scenes.
Yeah. And then coming up on November 3rd, we have an interview with Hannah Connor?
Right, we're going to look that up because we're not going to be those guys.
Yes. Author of Godkiller.
Yes,
which is highly popular right now.
It is. It's one of the biggest fantasies right now. And she's releasing a book 2 to that. I think it's going to be a duology, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Fantastic fantasy book. We're have the privilege of being able to sit down and talk with her about that. Also deep themes. And
her publisher did send us an ARC. Thank you
so much.
And then on November 9th, Where He Can't Find You by Darcy Coates, we will be reviewing that, which Beth Ann has already read, and she said it was amazing and creepy. And
yeah, it is. So as far as horrors go, that was the best horror I've read this year, hands down. Really? It was fantastic. It was amazing. And I don't actually remember. I don't have it with me here when that comes out, but I think should either be out or almost out. It's YA, but it is so fantastic, and I think you guys should pick it up because it is a new, refreshing take on horror, and it's actual, like, creepy monster horror.
Yeah.
So
there's
definitely give that a go.
There's no false advertisement of, this is about...
and I'm deceived and then let down and sad. It's really great. Darcy Coates really hit that one out of the park, so...
Yes. So make sure you tune in to our podcast. And then ask us questions. Email us at offthebooks@khcpl.org. Check out our blog. And I think we're going to be starting some TikTok stuff here.
Yes,
in
we're
a little
gonna
bit.
be working with a couple other coworkers, Michaela and Caitlin, to add to that. I almost said, what's it called? TikTok.
Instagram.
You can tell we don't use it. So we're going to be doing that. Look for that and get some more book recommendations from us as well. So that'll be fun.
All right. Hope you guys have a great rest of your week.
Bye.
Bye.